Welcome to Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. Join the podcast mogul Phil Better as he interviews successful entrepreneurs that make their living in the digital world. Now, let's join your host, Phil Better, and his special guest today on Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. Welcome back to Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. I am Phil Better, and in today's episode, we're thrilled to host a visionary who has truly mastered the art of franchising. As a top 1% franchise consultant in the US, our guest has leveraged his vast experience to guide numerous entrepreneurs towards achieving their dream of freedom and wealth generation through business ownership. Leading his own venture, FranBridge, he not only consults, but practices what he preaches as a multi-brand franchisee himself. His journey in franchising began at ShelfGenie, where he served as president, steering the company's growth across 200 locations. Before this deep dive into franchising, he spent 15 years scaling the corporate ladder, culminating as the vice president of sales for Carter's Inc., where he was responsible for, just a bit over $350 million in annual sales. His roots in business consulting started at Accenture, with projects that took him across international borders. Committed to giving back, he serves on the board of Entrepreneurs Organization and supports initiatives like Growing Leaders and Hope International. A proud Georgian, he holds both a BBA and MBA degrees from University of Georgia, and of course enjoys the vibrant community life in Atlanta with his wife Jenny and their 3 children. So please welcome Jon to the podcast. Jon, thank you so much for being here.
Phil, excited about our conversation. Thanks for having me.
I also forgot that you're also an author. I forgot to put that in this lengthy introduction, and I forgot to mention you have a book that we'll get to. But Jon, I'm excited because franchisees is something that's very different as an entrepreneurial model, but we see them everywhere when we walk down the streets. So excited to learn everything, how you came to be the number one consultant, to the top one, the big dog in the space. So Jon, first question out the bat, why? Why did you become an entrepreneur? Why did you jump into the franchisees world?
Yeah, like so many of your listeners, I always had a desire to build my own empire. And, I built too many other people's empires and wanted to do my own thing. But like so many, I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know what steps to take, what industry to go into, how my skill sets aligned. And really, I stumbled into franchising. I'd love to tell you a better story, but, had the opportunity to step in as president of ShelfGenie, as you mentioned. And really, that's where I fell in love with the franchise model. I'm supporting owners all across North America, US and Canada on a day-to-day basis. And, just saw how so many different backgrounds could thrive under a shared support system. And, people were in business for themselves, but they weren't by themselves. We were there as part of their team, supporting them, giving them the playbook, helping them with all facets of the company. So, fell in love with franchising. Since then, I've spun off and invested in franchises myself as a franchisee, as you mentioned. But I've got good people running the businesses, and it allows me to spend most of my time helping other entrepreneurs and investors across North America step into business ownership.
My question, okay, so you're a franchisee as well as someone who supports franchisees. Did you start with just one right off the bat, or were you like, let's jump into 10 at a time and be the crazy building a jumbo jet instead of just a one-seater plane off the ledge?
Yeah, several different things. So I did jump into several, not a ton, but I did jump into several, but I had partners on each one. So again, it didn't all fall on myself. I won't pretend like it did, but I definitely played a big role in each one, but was not incredibly involved in some of the day-to-day aspects of each one of those businesses.
Okay, so you were more CEO than president. If we look at the hierarchy, you're both equal, obviously, but someone else was handling the day-to-day, and you came in month to month or whenever needed to help out, in essence.
Yeah, exactly. And
I love that.
During that same time, I realized, hey, there's such a gap in understanding in the market, and there's such an opportunity to help others with that. And that's when I say the F word, franchise, people think a fast food, and yet there's so many other industries. That's the title of my book, Non-Food Franchising, because I love educating audiences on all these other ways to make money in the franchising umbrella outside of hotels and fast food, which is usually what comes to mind.
Yeah, those when you first sent me an email telling me about non-food franchise, I'm like, that's what it didn't click, you know. I knew about like Speedy Auto Glass. I'm like, okay, yeah, but like those are mechanics, like those just, you know, those are like food, like doesn't make sense. And so I took a look at your book and I was like, okay, this is very interesting. And I would love for you to tell my audience, like, what are some of other franchises that we may not be aware of that are franchisees?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of interest out there in a broad range of categories. I'd say the common theme right now, if there were one, is, hey, what's recession resilient? What's going to stand up and do well that's not going to be disrupted by Amazon? It's not going to be disrupted that much by the economy if it were to go south. I mean, we've been talking about a recession for like a decade now. So what if the economy does go south? So a lot of people step in wanting to be cautious around that. And so we're seeing that translate into things like home and property services, which I joke about as being non-sexy businesses, but they're understandable. They're cash flowing. They're not going out of style. No one's going to get, it's not trendy. But everything from dumpsters to insulation to floor coatings to gutters, businesses like that, where you're oftentimes bringing a white collar approach to a blue collar industry. We're seeing a lot of interest in things like health and wellness, everything from men's health and testosterone replacement to mental health. Certainly fitness as well. We're seeing a lot of interest in areas like kids, pets, seniors, things again that are understandable. They're always going to be in need. And the beauty of the franchise model, Phil, is in most cases, our clients don't have any background in that industry they're stepping into. So it gives them a chance to put that business owner hat on, come in, follow the playbook, lean into the franchisor support team, and let them do a lot of the heavy lifting while they, really focus on hiring talent, retaining, incentivizing, and executing the playbook. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
I love it because it takes the pressure off an entrepreneur if they have this kind of playbook, because it's kind of like the in between. You're an entrepreneur, very sure, because you're running it yourself, right? However, you still have that backup of a corporation, quote unquote, because they went through all the iterations. They had to come up with the playbook that they're like, okay, if you just follow this, we're good to go. You're pretty much printing money, if you will. Like that's where that's where franchisees, instead of the full-blown entrepreneur where you're jumping off the cliff, creating your own plane. So I like that. I like how the franchisee is kind of the in-between world, and it's a great world as well.
Yeah, and I do believe it's a better path to business ownership for most. I do think there's some that are too entrepreneurial. They don't want to live within the lines. Franchising's not right for them. And I have to tell some clients that. But for most of them, including existing business owners, those that have been there and started their own company, most of them love the idea of franchising for their next rodeo, as they build out that portfolio of businesses. We have so many case studies to show this, but they love the idea that they can step in and start on third base. A lot of the marketing and lead generation's already been figured out. They've optimized around the data from other markets. Product market fit has been established. They're not guessing. They're able to come in and understand what the historical financials look like, and so they can build their pro forma with some degree of intelligence. Something that oftentimes gets overlooked beyond just the franchisor supporting you kind of as a coach on the sidelines. In a good franchise system, you're going to have a lot of other owners living the same thing day in, day out. And so you're constantly learning from each other, exchanging best practices. And so you build some community that way as well.
Yeah, it is building community. You're building a community because, like, if I'm facing a problem that, John, you face, and I'm in the Facebook group, I'm in the mastermind group, I'm in however the franchisees organize it, the Slack message, and I'm like, hey, I have this issue, and you can jump in and go, Phil, I solved it doing this, this, and this. Maybe you can do that, and I put it into practice. Before you know it, I'm off running, and when you have an issue, I'm willing to help. And it's a true community-based lifestyle, because everybody's facing the same problems, just in different areas.
And the better you do, the more the brand is worth for them. There's that halo effect. So a lot of synergy.
It's less selfish, because if I improve, you improve, then the value goes up, because if you're going up, it brings up my value. And if and ever I do decide to sell, I have a better evaluation because we have all worked together to build that evaluation. Um, what prompted you to write this book?
Yeah, I was doing a lot of speaking, similar to this, and just seeing audiences lean in and how the message resonated. And I felt like, again, franchising, some try to focus on the entire market. For me, cutting out half the market was the smartest thing I've ever done. I cut out hotels and food and car washes. Those are a different animal too. But focusing on these other industries allows me to go deep, and that's where most of my clients want to play. I've got nothing against the food guys. We need them. We support them. Some of them do very well, but for me, I believe, my humble belief is there are easier ways to make money. That require less capex investment on the front end, maybe fewer employees, less operating hours, higher margins due to not having food waste, less susceptible to customer trends and consumer whims. So again, we support the food guys, but there's so many better ways to make money, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, I can agree. Just like I prefer working on the internet than working a brick and mortar because a lot more freedom. I have my laptop, I can work from anywhere. Whereas a brick and mortar, you're a little more locked into space, but works for everybody, right? Each for their own. Jon, with franchises, because a lot of people are concerned because you hear like, oh, it's tough, it doesn't always work. What are maybe one of the pain points you see when you're consulting with your franchisees, because you are with FranBridge, you're helping these franchisees take it to the next level. What are some pain points, or maybe one pain point that you notice consistently across your consulting?
Yeah, and so we're primarily working on the front end. We'll work with a candidate. Our service is entirely free. We're essentially a real estate agent, but for franchises. So we'll take them through a process and match them up. And just like any industry, franchising has strong players and weak players. There's some that I'd want to align myself with, and some I wouldn't. And so we help them identify, the best opportunities that are available in their market, and we talk to them about those opportunities and let them choose. But I'd say once they're past that point, and really the franchisor is supporting them. I think of a case study recently where a client of ours decided to close down, and this doesn't happen often, but we had it every now and then. It does. It's just a law of numbers. But I remember reaching out to the franchisor and saying, "Hey, I've had so many other clients do really well with your franchise system. What happened in this case? What can we do to support this individual?" And I'll never forget his response. He said, "Jon, we have done everything we can. We've flown people down there. We've put them through additional training. He won't listen. He doesn't want to follow the system. He wants to do things his own way." And this sounds so cliche, but when I was at ShelfGenie and I looked across our owners across North America, really the two things that separated the strongest ones from everybody else were their ability to work with people, right? I mean, that goes without saying in business, right? You've got to be someone that people want to work for or want to work with. And then secondly, it was their willingness to follow the playbook. And I'd say those that followed it the closest were our top performers. Those that said, "Hey, I'm not going to try to be the smartest guy in the room, but there's a reason why I'm buying into a franchise system. Let me take this and go out and execute." And, a good franchisor is still going to let them be innovative and try new things, because that's how a franchise system grows. They learn new things, and then everyone shares them, best practices. But they're also going to say, "Hey, let's go execute. We know how to get you to where you want to be faster. Let's not take all these detours along the way."
So yeah, so you're seeing like the biggest thing is you also have to be coachable. You have to be willing to learn as well, because if you're not willing to listen to anybody, you're not going to get anywhere. So yeah, I can understand why that gentleman or that franchise unfortunately had to close their doors. When you're looking at potential franchise to partner with and work with, how do you go about judging if it's a good market? Let's say if you're going into a new like a franchise, or you're looking at a new one, how do you know if it's a good market for you to go into?
Yeah, so we work with over 600 different franchise companies, really all of those that are in growth mode, looking to expand and have room to expand into new markets. That's where we focus. But I'd say, Phil, at any given time, there's probably 50 or 60 of those that I feel are the strongest ones. And the lenses through which I'm looking are things like Obviously, the financial model's got to check the boxes, the competitive advantages. We're looking at what are current owners in their system saying about their experience so far. We get that feedback. And we're looking at the leadership teams. We want to see a good blend of industry experience as well as franchise experience represented on that team. So, once we start applying those filters on behalf of a client in a given market, combined with what our client's looking to do, are they looking to run the business as an owner operator full time, or are they looking to put a manager in place and maybe keep their day job, what we call semi-passive? We're looking at what's their financial situation, what's their background, what could do well in that market. And I'd say what could do well in that market, it's fairly high level. We're primarily saying, hey, it's done well in comparable markets, and then ultimately further into the process, they can do a little bit of due diligence on there and maybe some secret shopping and really understand who that local competition is and how they would compete with them. But no, those are some of the main lenses that we take people through. So oftentimes if you said, hey, I'm interested in opening up a business in Montreal, don't know what to do. What do you think, John? I would get on a call with you, and then I'd come back to you a couple of days later with, hey, Phil, if I'm in your shoes, here are the 10 opportunities that are available in your market that I'd want to be looking at, and here's why. Your goal would be to take those, call it 10, and narrow them down to maybe 3 or 4 to then actually have a phone call with. And so oftentimes that one that was number 4 in your mind going in is the one you end up choosing to go with. You have that light bulb moment, and you look at your spouse or what have you, and say, I can see myself doing that. That makes a lot of sense.
I like that. What was it like for you? Like, have you sold any of your franchise? Have you exited out of your some of your franchises, or have you stayed with nearly all of them that you started and you're just continually adding to your portfolio because you're a greedy man, or a hungry hippo, if you will?
We have sold a couple, and I have bought a couple from existing franchisees of other systems. So, that's a very natural exit strategy in franchising. Your lowest hanging fruit would be, if you're ready to sell the business, let's talk to other franchisees in the system. Some of them are looking to expand. And so that's a great way for them to expand and you to exit. You can also talk to the franchisor and say, hey, who has shown interest in my business over time? And, kind of go that path, have a natural lead list. Certainly you could put it out there on Biz by Sale and other websites, to get a lot of eyeballs as well. And this is interesting, Phil. So research has been done where they show that franchise businesses trade at a slightly higher multiple than non-franchise businesses in like-kind industries. Again, we're not talking about the tech world here. These are largely physical businesses. They may or may not be brick and mortar. They may just be more service-based and out in the field. But at the end of the day, when you look at like-kind industries, that resale buyer sees value in an existing franchise over just a traditional business.
I like that. That's something important to take in consideration when you do start, because if an existing business already has that, like you said, like know and trust. If this business already has that built in versus, George's Pizza that just has been around for 10 years versus, McDonald's or something that's been around a long time.
And it's really interesting. A lot of my clients come to us and say, hey, we're looking for an existing business because to purchase. On paper, that sounds great, right? You've got a known entity there in the market. You've got a team in place. Maybe it's cash flowing already. So that sounds great. But I really look at it from a mindset, and I kind of turn on the light bulb for my clients. There's risk involved there because you're paying a premium for this business. What if day one, your key employees leave? I mean, whenever you have a change in ownership, there's going to be some upheaval, in culture and such. And depending on the business, you may lose a key customer, if there were relationships. Oftentimes, you don't know that risk until you've already signed the dotted line and paid the check. And so, and all of a sudden, you're in business for yourself and by yourself. And so that's where I like franchising a lot, where from day one, you can kind of set the culture, build the team, and again, you've got that support mechanism on the sideline where at the end of the day, the buck stops with you as the owner. But if you've got a great team supporting your team day in, day out, it takes a lot of that support burden off of you.
And I like that because you're talking to entrepreneurs, because your job as an entrepreneur is not to wear all the hats. You can't do everything because you're not the expert at everything. And what's really great is the previous interview I just had, because I'm a glutton for punishment. I do multiple interviews in one day, but it allows me to connect more dots. Mentioned, I don't have to be a genius. I just have to hire a genius, which is what franchisees is pretty much doing. You already have your org chart. You don't have to build your own org chart. You already have the org chart. You're like, okay, I just have to fill in these pieces and the puzzle's set. And now I have to make sure they do their job. If they want to be a like you said, semi-passive income, or they can be more involved and be the president and CEO if they will. They're like, I like punishment. I want to be here 24/7. Which is also very good because you get to keep that culture. You get to make sure the culture stays to what you want. With your expertise, because I'm guessing you're more of the semi-passive franchisee than the hardcore, I want to be there 24/7. What are you looking for when you're hiring those people, those geniuses, if you will, for the positions? How do you go about doing it?
Yeah, I think that's the $1 million question: is how do you find the right people, that are going to be loyal and all that. What I found a lot of success with, I'll just give a case study. We hired a general manager a little while back. He was 27 years old. Hired him for a driveway franchise that we had. He was a CPA, an accountant. Not who you would assume to step into that role.
Yeah.
But he was a really outgoing accountant, and that didn't fit him. So I love kind of that stage where someone's worked a couple of years in a professional environment. They've got a little bit of experience, but now they're poking their head up and looking around saying, what else is there? Well, you can give them a fancy title. Titles are free. That's something I've learned, bump them up in title. That means something.
Podcast mogul.
It means something to them, right? But then, you just put together a compensation plan that aligns your interest. In some cases, clients of mine will actually open up the cap table and, share equity with them, or maybe it's sweat equity. In some cases, they say, hey, I'd rather not bring someone else on the cap table, but let's just put together a quarterly bonus plan that, is a profit sharing plan. So the better they do, the better the owner does. And just really aligning the interest on a variable comp basis. In the scenario that I just said, a couple of weeks in, he said, hey, I like what we're building here. Can I buy into the business? Well, that's music to our ears. I mean, that's the best scenario, right? That he's saying, hey, let me put some skin in the game. So I'd say that's the ideal situation. But everyone's different. But as far as finding the talent, oftentimes it does come from the places you least expect. I mean, we've put posts out there on, some of the top job websites, and we'll get, just tons of resumes coming our way. It's amazing to me every time how many people are out there looking, and how many people have reasonable backgrounds that could fit. But oftentimes it is, that relationship in the market where it's like, hey, my sister works with a guy that, is looking for a new job, or, I've got a neighbor. I mean, there's so many of those kind of just grassroots organic ways of finding someone. And again, I think setting them up for success from day one. And in most cases, they don't want you breathing down their neck, but it's kind of like, hey, here's what I can support you with. Here's the ongoing coaching I'm going to provide. And here's what the franchisor can support you with. And they can become that go-to for a lot of their day-to-day questions.
I love that. And you're setting them up for success that they may have not gotten in other companies, because again, we all want to be the CEO. We all want to be president. We all want that fancy title that we heard when we were growing up. And jumping into a franchisee or into a franchise, because it's kind of like a startup, you have this opportunity to mold the culture or be part of a culture that's just growing. And so you can see what's good, what's bad, because we all know some corporate cultures aren't the best. There's good parts of the corporation, but at the same time, there's always a few bad apples everywhere. But I love this because it's kind of like a mixture of both. I already have that, idea of culture because I come from a corporation. I have the structure of a corporation. So jumping into a franchise, there's less training, if you will, you have to do. You just have to teach them the new aspects, which is great.
And what's really neat is a lot of our clients come back and buy additional businesses over time. They see franchising, I call it franchising as an asset class. It's a piece of the portfolio. A lot of our clients invest in real estate as well and other things, but they see this active business income and the tax advantage proposition that it poses, just like real estate's tax advantage on the passive side. This is tax advantage on the active side. But I had multiple clients in recent weeks that have come back and bought round two. businesses that complement their first one. In one case, they had bought senior care, in-home healthcare, the first round, kind of a unique business within a large market. And they came back and bought a business that now does, they can serve those same customers, but it's retrofitting bathrooms, wheelchair ramps, stair lifts, helping people age in place. And it goes great with their current customer base. I had another client that just came back and bought another youth sports franchise, that complements kind of their first one. The first one was soccer focused. Now they're getting into one that, from the same parent company in this case, but they provide, for pickleball and golf and tennis, and kind of merging the two. I've had a lot of clients that have done this in the property services arena, where it's like, hey, I think of my client Nathan. He's the largest franchisee of 2 Minute and Truck moving service. Operates in probably 12 markets. And has built a $30 million plus business. Well, every year he buys another franchise, typically in like waste management or property services, and he puts one of his young guys in charge of it and says, hey, go make us proud. And in every case, he's come back and bought additional locations of that business. So he's done very well with it, but it gives him a way to recruit better talent and a path to grow them within his organization and give them opportunities for promotion and more responsibility.
And he's investing in the not only youth, but investing in his employees. Because if I'm working for a company and I know that, hey, if I show that I'm a badass, that I can take it to the next level, I may be given the opportunity to run a business or be part of a new one and have an exponential growth in my career. Like, that's what I think a lot of, people want. They want to be able to know that there is this upward trend. And with franchisees and franchises, there's a lot of that opportunity, because if they buy a second one, you may be plucked to be, okay, I need you to run it because I know how well you do at this one already. And I love that. That's a great idea. And of course, with the option of either buying in at one point or sharing the rev, it's a win-win scenario for everybody involved, because you have someone with skin in the game. Once they know that they get a piece of the pie, if I that's why I love being an entrepreneur. I get the whole pie, but if someone's like, hey, I want a piece of the pie, and I'll put in sweat equity, sure. Yeah. I love that. I want to talk about the future, because with different trends going on and emerging, because we're in the tech world, and I'm guessing innovations in the service-based world, what emerging trends in franchising that have you excited, and how is FranBridge positioning itself to capitalize on those trends?
Yeah, we're always trying to figure out what the latest thing coming down the chute, on behalf of our clients. And I mean, I personally love the seat that I sit in, because I get exposed to all these different business models. So there's so many franchisors in different segments that you would never think that would be a franchise, but they're saying, hey, franchising can create it. I mean, private equity loves franchising, so they've got that in their heads that, but they, their idea is, hey, franchising presents an opportunity to scale using essentially other people's money. They've got skin in the game. They know their local markets. They're highly incentivized. And, we can train them with what we've learned here. So we just see so many emerging brands. I'd say that's a trend. I don't like the term trend, but that's a movement that's going on. And I love seeing we've done a bunch of deals recently with a business that does temporary containment walls around construction sites. Think of all the renovations you see in a hospital or in the airport or in retail hotels. You don't think about it, but there's walls that go around those, right? So I love those little kind of niches that you would never think of unless you see it, right? Yeah. So that's probably the most fun. We've never seen more interest in franchising than we have now. I think there's still a COVID effect of people saying, hey, I'm disenchanted with going back to the office, working with some employer. I really don't want to go interview for someone else. I'd rather build my own thing, but how do we do it? And they're starting to get exposed to the many opportunities that franchising does deliver. So we're also seeing a lot of real estate investors moving over. They're saying, hey, high interest rates, low inventory, where else can I find a yield and, maybe be semi-active in a business?
I love that. And that's great. Plus real estate agents people that invest in real estate, they have real estate that hey, if I need a brick and mortar, I may have a property. So now they're, again, taking from the left, putting into the right, which is
Yeah.
always better. Why not keep the money inside so it grows your businesses? Before we get to the end, I'm very interested because this podcast is about investing in yourself. Um, Throughout your very career, you went from consulting at Accenture to leading FranBridge. How have you invested in your own personal and professional development, and how can this and how has this influenced your success in the franchising world?
Yeah, I've always been very focused in this. I think that it's a great investment to invest in yourself. And, from, going back to grad school, earning my MBA years ago to joining mastermind groups. I'm a part of several different groups. Entrepreneurs Organization is EO, which is a global organization. That's one that I've been a part of for 6 years now, serving on their board. And, just being exposed, I'd say I learned so much by those that I surround myself with. And you don't get that exposure you need as a business owner unless you're around other business owners from different industries that have different ways of thinking. I spent most of my career in the corporate world. That's a very different mindset. I had a good run, appreciate everything I learned, but I needed other entrepreneurs that have been at it longer than I have to learn from. So I'd say that's probably the biggest thing. I mean, outside of that, I listen to a whole lot of content. I consume a lot of books, nerd out on all of that. Believe in the health and wellness aspect too, and how that plays in. So, trying to be the best father, husband, and entrepreneur I can be.
I love it. Jon, with the final question before we leave, because I'm having a great time. We're going to have you back for sure, because we barely touched on the book, and I feel horrible, but I'm pretty sure by the time you come back, there's going to be at least a third book out. I have your 10-year-old self here, Jon. I want to know, what is one piece of advice you would love to hand back to your 10-year-old self?
I think just don't be so self-conscious and concerned with what other people think. I see my 12-year-old son living through this right now. Middle school is a unique time, but I'd say where I've had success in my career is when I step out and try something new and go against the grain and don't follow everybody else. Don't try to blend in. I mean, even the title of my book, right? Non-food franchising, it's contrarian. I'm cutting out half the market. Ended up being a very smart move, and I had to calculate a risk as to thinking that it would. And so I'd say just don't follow the herd. Step out, be your own man, own your different, and things will fall into place.
I love it. Jon, I'm going to jump off stage here. I want you to let my audience know how they can connect with you. You have a special surprise for them as well, which is incredible. So, sir, the floor is yours.
Yeah, come join us at FranBridgeConsulting.com, FranBridgeConsulting.com, and just share your email address. We will send you links to a free digital download of our book, whether you like the PDF version or the Audible version. We've got both of those available. Certainly, if you'd like to buy it on Amazon, all proceeds go to a great nonprofit that we support, Hope International. So, want to give them a shout out. But no, feel free to come out, get a free book, and then if this is an area that you'd like to take a next step in and learn more, like I said, it's entirely free to work with us. But we'd love to hop on a quick call with you, and we can just talk about what it looks like and what next steps will look like, and go from there. So again, FranBridgeConsulting.com, and I look forward to engaging.
Awesome, Jon. I can't thank you enough for being here and opening our eyes to the non-food franchising models that are out there, and some of the where the riches are truly in the niches.
Absolutely. Enjoyed it, Phil. Really appreciate you having me on.
Excellent. To my audience, of course, check out the show notes down below. They will have all the links to FranBridge Consulting, to Jon. Make sure you reach out to him. And if you're if you're interested in going into the franchising model. And again, thank you, Jon. Thank you for listening. And remember always to invest in yourself.